This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review. I'm your host, Gilad Halpern. Every week we bring you conversations with authors and other people about the books and research and other things that we like. And if you like us, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter by going to our homepage. That's tlv1.fm/Tel Aviv Review. Scroll down to the bottom and click the big red button that says Patreon. Click and support us. Some of you have been doing this for months and years, and we simply cannot thank you enough. This is an episode in an ongoing series co-sponsored by the Sadie and Ludwig Kahn Chair in Jewish History at UCLA. And I'm delighted to be joined again, this time in the studio, by my brother-in-arms, Professor David N. Myers, who holds the Kahn Chair. Professor Myers is a distinguished professor of Jewish history, as well as the director of the UCLA Luskin Center for History and Policy. Hi, David. Welcome.
Great to be with you and to sit next to you here in Tel Aviv.
Mm-hmm. Our guest today is a documentary filmmaker. Her latest film, 1948, Remember, Remember Not, is a chronicle of Israel's War of Independence and its memorialization. The film was commissioned by Kan, Israel's public broadcaster, for the country's 75th Independence Day in 2023. And although the production has been complete for a long time, it has yet to be broadcast. This is following a right-wing campaign that claims that the film defames Israel. Neta Shoshani, hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Hey, good morning.
So, Neta, can you tell us what the origins of the film are? Much has been written about 1948. What did you want to explore?
Well, first of all, much has been written about 1948, but still, I think, I know actually, that the average Israeli that is living here and living this Israeli-Palestinian conflict every day in his everyday life doesn't know the basic information or knowledge that I think that he needs to know about this war. So for me, it was important to bring this knowledge, first of all, to the Israeli audience, to the Israeli public, because I think it's essential to understand what happened here in 1948. If you want to understand the present of the Israeli state.
But by this complete information, you mean obviously the revisionist history that was written about the 1948 war. Benny Morris features in the great revisionist historian of the war. It's featured at length in the film, talking about his research and everything that he has found.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this how you, quote unquote, sold it to Kan, to the public broadcaster, when you came to them and they commissioned the film? Did they know it was going to be about uncomfortable facts?
Of course. From the very beginning, from the very first paper that I wrote as a suggestion of this documentary, I never hide it, that I want to bring the two narrative, the Israeli narrative, the Palestine narrative, the independence war along the Nakba story together. I always declare that I want to bring these voices to the screen. And so it was there from the very beginning.
So, already in the late 1980s, the Israeli public, or at least a portion of it, was exposed to the work of a group known as the New Historians. Gilad mentioned Benny Morris, also Abi Shleim, Ilan Pape, even earlier, Simcha Flapan. These are historians who called attention to expulsions of Palestinians, to psychological warfare, even to massacres undertaken by Jewish and Israeli forces. And as an aggregate, as a group, they kind of exploded the myth of the Jewish and later Israeli forces as David facing off against Goliath, sort of the Goliath of the Arab world. But that was almost 40 years ago. So why now? Why did you feel the need to revisit this body of scholarship that you knew about and bring it to the attention of the public now. Was there some particular urgent cause or reason that you felt the public needs to know?
First of all, unfortunately, most of the people doesn't read historian researches and books. People doesn't do it. And I wanted to communicate this important research that people in the academy knows and talk about and research. The research is very wide inside the academy in Israel and all over the world. But unfortunately, the public doesn't really know about it. And there is a gap between the wide knowledge of the research about these topics and the knowledge of the public. And this is what a television series can do. It was supposed to be broadcasted in the public Israeli broadcaster. And I mean, I didn't think it's going to be a hit, popular series.
A blockbuster.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that it's easier to watch a television series, and we made a big effort to make it communicative and that a wide range of people can watch it and understand and get connected to it.
So, Neta, when did you actually encounter the new historians for the first time, and what impact did it have on you? Did it kind of explode myths that you had grown up with?
Yeah, of course. I grew up in the Israeli education system. I learned in good schools in Jerusalem. I finished history
Matriculation certificate.
Yeah. And you don't learn about this history. And you, as a teenager or a young person that doesn't go to university, to Department of History, you don't have an opportunity, you don't exposed to this history. So yeah, I didn't know. I grew up on the Israeli ethos that we were David and the Arab all around us were Goliath, and they wanted to kick us out from here. You know, the purity of arms, the
doctrine of the Jewish fighting forces.
Yeah, exactly. That the IDF, the Israeli army, is the most moral army in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I grew up on this, and it all began in 1948 in that war. That was very justice and moral war.
So how were you exposed to it? Because you didn't go to university to study history or Israel studies or whatever.
Well, as you grow, I am a curious person. I used to be also when I was young. And I think the first time I started to, my first documentary called Born in Dir Yassin, I started working on it when I was actually a student in Bezalel, Academy of Art and Design in Jerusalem. It started as an art project, and I was actually, I don't know if you know, but Dir Yassin was it was the most famous case of a conquering Arab village in 1948. It was famous for its massacre. It's known as the Dir Yassin massacre. It's a main ethos in the Palestinian memory, and I was starting digging about that, and I think it opened for me this whole world or past.
Tell us more about what brought you to Dir Yassin. I mean, it is in some sense the most explosive event in sort of the entire combustible narrative of 1948, April 9, 1948.
First of all, I think it was the fact that, again, I didn't know anything about it. I was born in Jerusalem, raised in Jerusalem.
Deir Yassin is just outside Jerusalem, we should say.
It's actually inside Jerusalem. It used to be in the outskirts of Jerusalem, but it actually Givat Shaul. It's a neighborhood, one of the neighborhoods of Jerusalem. So and actually in the center of the old village, a public mental hospital of Jerusalem was built on it. It's called the Kfar Shaul, and it was sealed with a fence already in 1952. And it's actually a weird territory. It's like no one's territory, the territory of the crazy people of Jerusalem that are hospitalized there. And this is how I knew it, as a closed place that I can't get in. And actually, it was like a nice metaphor for the history that I don't know about and nobody wants me to know about it. So I really I guess I was a young person. I wanted to know the past. I wanted to cross the forbidden borders of the village in the past and in the present. And that's what I did. And this is my first documentary. And after I finished it was a while ago, I understood Deir Yassin is only one case. And many Deir Yassins happened in this war. And we even know less about them. Deir Yassin was kind of famous. I heard the name. I didn't know what happened there, but I heard the name. And I understood it was like around the 70th anniversary of Israel. And I understood that until that time, no wide documentary about this war was ever done. And I thought, it's about time. I mean, if not now, so when? Yeah.
So going back to 48, to the film 1948, Remember, Remember Not, this is really the epistemological framework. I mean, the revisionist history, etc. But the actual thing is based not on historical accounts necessarily or by historians, but on personal letters and diaries and really sort of a first-person witnesses to the events. And another thing that really struck me, and I think that I've followed the story of 1948 quite a bit, is the amazing footage and so much of it from really the inside of the event. So I'd like to hear a little about the research process. Where did you go? Where did you find things? How did you dig them up, etc.?
So first of all, I'll just say that it was important for me not to just interview historians that will tell the audience what happened in 1948.
Which you also do, but not briefly.
Not really.
Yeah.
Well, you have Betty Morris in the movie.
And you have Mustafa Kabha.
Yeah, but they are there as characters that are working on this ethos, past history, and they have a role in exposing it or something like that. And the chronological events are building through these diaries and personal texts that we collected for a long time in a really wide research process. And it was important for me to do that because I always like to hear the history from the personal point of view, from the people who lived it, and not from the historians who explored it. And unfortunately, I got to tell about this war almost 75 years after it it finished. So I couldn't count on the memory of the living people because there are not many, of course. And if they are with us, their memory is, I'm not sure exactly if it.
But I have to say that you circumvent that problem interestingly, because there's one witness that reads her own letters from the event.
Yeah,
so it's not really talking about what she remembers, but how she reacts to what you wrote in real time.
Yeah, exactly. She is actually the only diaries writer that is still with us. She's the only one that is still living in a very good shape. I found her in a very good shape, and it was good to see, and I work with it. So anyway, I knew I can't count on this memory and on these people because they are not with us, and I still wanted to tell this history through people and not through historians. So the best way I found is to do it through diaries and letters that were written in real time, and in that way I wanted to. I think the big question I wanted to understand is if the small people, or actually, I use also Ben Gurion diaries and others, if they understood the big history that is going in front of their eyes, and I tried to bring this perspective to the documentary. So this is the diaries, and it took us a long time to find all these diaries. Actually, there was a problem because I wanted to bring also Palestinian voices. I didn't want to bring only the Jewish Israeli voices. So I found lots of Jewish Israeli diaries and letters. They all, it seems like everybody who lived here wrote something, diary, letters, and it all was kept really good in archives. I found it in a good state. It was easy to find. And from the other side, the Palestinian side, it was very hard to find. First of all, because most of the population, of the Palestinian population who lived here in 1948 were villagers, falahim, and most of them didn't know how to read and write, so they didn't write. But also the
bourgeois.
And the middle class.
Yeah, also the middle class population that lived mostly in the cities.
They fled.
Yeah, they fled. They had to run away. So when you run away, usually you don't take diaries and papers and letters. You take, I don't know, money, gold, this kind of stuff. And they never came back. So many of it lost. And also because I am Jewish Israeli, and I was working to the public broadcaster of Israel for the 75 anniversary of Israel, when I was trying to dialogue with Palestinians in diaspora, that if they kept letters and this kind of stuff, it was very hard to have this dialogue.
And what about the footage?
And so I'll just say that at the end I found it was hard, but with the assistance of Palestinian researchers that work with me, we found letters and diaries also of Palestinians. The footage, well, when I started this process, we knew mostly, I think, 10 footages, black and white footages of that war, of the 1948 war. And whenever someone wanted to show the 98 war with footage, these 10 black and white footage were the one that they used. So we didn't know more of it. But we started again with assistance of a researcher, of visual researcher, to look for everything that were shot here in this land between 1947 to 1949. And we looked all over the world. I mean, at the end, the footage you see in the documentary came from more than 60 archives around the world. Some of them came from the newsreels, from, I don't know, Europe, the States, etc. But the most beautiful ones, the ones that come in color, came from private collections of private people who had these private cameras, 8 millimeters, 16 millimeters, even 32 millimeters, home videos.
How did you get to them?
Are they in Israel or abroad?
Some of them were in Israel, some of them were in the States, some of them were in Europe. They kept in different places.
So private archives?
Yeah, private archives.
And you capture, the sentiments of the day, both Jewish and Palestinian. And one of the things that's so striking in your capturing the Jewish perspective is just, especially of the young fighters, just the fear of death, the fear that, any minute life could be extinguished. We think of, from the Jewish perspective, the War of Liberation, Independence as a great moment of sort of liberation from fear, and yet the daily experience of those fighters was, at any moment, people were dying around them, and death was a very daily part.
Well,
life.
it was, and actually, I don't know how you see this war from outside of Israel, but in the Israeli memory, collective memory, we remember the ethos of this war, and Magash HaKesef, the silver platter, yeah, many soldiers. I mean, this generation of the young soldiers who had to fight for this country gave their life, and many gave their life. And the experience of this generation is that many of their friends are dead in this war, and they are willing to give their life for this mission. This is the mission of that generation, to establish country.
Right, the sense of self-sacrifice on behalf of a large ideal.
Exactly.
As opposed to what you depict on the Palestinian side was just, which is, and convey it very in very textured terms, just the enormous sense of loss. And I guess this leads me to ask a question about the structure of the film, which is divided into these two parts: remember, not remember, or forget. And I'm wondering how you see the relationship between those two. The obvious answer would be sequential, right? First remember, then in the Israeli case, forget. But another way to look at it is Jews remember, Palestinians are forgotten. How do you see it?
I'm not sure that was the meaning of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was interested in the Israeli ethos, the way we remember this in the collective memory again, this war in our society, the Israeli society, the Israeli Jewish society in Israel. What the leadership of that time wanted us to remember. Was it deliberated that we will remember this part and not other part of this war? And if and how it was built on the actual history, what part of it was built on the actual history? Because ethos is always, it has to be built on some of the history, at least. And from the other hand, what was repressed, what was forgotten, what part we don't remember, who wanted us not to remember that parts and why. And in the process of the documentary, and it's a long one. It's a 2.5 hours. I build the ethos at the beginning, and then I start to break it into parts. I think until the collapse of it at the end.
Collapse of the ethos.
Yeah, the collapse of the ethos.
Yeah, but it's also, you presented this ambivalence in such an interesting way, because on the one hand, you have Benny Morris talking about all his findings 40 years ago about numerous massacres and other war crimes that were committed by the Israeli troops. And at the same time, you have another interviewee, an archivist who works for the Israel State Archive. Apparently there's one piece of paper, a government report that was written in 1948, and I'm not even sure what it's about, right? Because he refuses to say, and you are prevented from saying, I'm guessing, because of the censorship that prevents him to say. And it puts it in such a ludicrous light that alongside Benny Morris telling all these horror stories, you have one state official refusing to say what was in that state report. That I'm guessing was much less serious than what Benny Morris has to say.
Well, I'm not sure if it's less serious or not. I do know that the Israeli archives still concealing the written evidence papers of governmental papers that admit that these war crimes of war happens by the Israeli army.
This is the so-called Shapira report,
Yeah.
undertaken by or overseen by the first Attorney General of the state, Yaakov Shimshon Shapira.
Yeah.
There was a commission, there was a report, and the report has been suppressed in the archives for a very long time.
Until today. Actually, nobody saw it until today. The fact that the Israeli government explored these war crimes and had a report on it, and they all knew, and they they all knew about it, and then they decided to conceal these documents and not to show it to the public. Nobody heard about it. Nobody know that they even explore it. Nobody know that this report exists. That's what Benny Morris understood, that in his research, that this document is even exist. Nobody know it before Benny Morris. So, and the fact that it's still closed today, 75 years after, why? From what reason? I mean, this is the question I'm asking in the documentary. And this archivist that is actually one of the very few people who actually saw and read this report, because historians can't see it. Only the people that work in the Israeli State Archive, very specific people in a high
positions.
Yeah, positions can actually see it and read it. So he did, and he says it should be closed even now. Still, it shouldn't be open. Why? He thinks that it can damage Israel.
I mean, that's a question you asked Benny Morris directly.
Yeah.
Does your research damage Israel? And he says, yeah, probably, but I'm an historian. And that's also, in a certain sense, the ethos of the archivists who say, our job is, for the most part, to not to conceal documents, but to expose them to public, with certain exceptions. I'm wondering how you see the archivists. Are they heroes of the story? Are they
some of them? Some of them are heroes. Listen, I don't agree to this. I don't think that this kind of information, researches that going out and spread in the world is hurting Israel or make damage to Israel. I really don't believe it. I believe that if you open the history, I mean, the history happened. The Palestinians, the world, as we see now, it doesn't need these papers or this research to know what happened. I think that it shows something about, of course, it shows something about a society that wants to open the past, that wants to deal with the past, even if it's hard, even with its hard corners.
So there was that period of openness in the late 80s when there was receptivity, at least in certain circles, to the findings of the new historians, and that seems to have been closed, certainly consistent with sort of the insights that we derived from the Second Intifada, when Israelis now said, we see the true face of our enemy, in the famous interview by Ari Shavita, Benny Morris, which seemed to suggest we've entered a new state in just imagining our history or sort of setting contours or boundaries to what we want to remember.
Listen, I think that this research, it was going out in the years when there was a political hope in this area. Yeah, it was the years of negotiation for peace, the years of Oslo. People believe that maybe it's going to be better here, so maybe now we can open the past. Maybe now we can deal with that. Dark chapter. Yeah, but the political situation was changed.
Yeah, I mean, the film obviously was produced before the 7th of October 2023.
Yeah.
And I wonder what it would look like if it were produced afterwards. I mean, do you think that an archivist would pursue the same line? I mean, not protecting Israel's good name after what we've seen in Gaza?
First of all, I don't think that it could be produced after October 7th. It would never. It wouldn't happen. I mean, nobody wants to deal with this kind of issues.
Would you go about
today.
it differently, you yourself?
No, I wouldn't, because this is a documentary about the history. The history didn't change. October 7th didn't change the history of 1948.
Do you think it helps us in a way understand the 7th of October better?
I'm sure. That's why I insisted that the Israeli public broadcaster should broadcast it already.
Well, they're sort of contracted also, right? I mean, aren't they bound by a contract to broadcast it at some point?
No. They bound just to pay me the money,
Okay.
the amount of money, and I have to give them the film ready, the documentary ready, but they don't have to broadcast it.
They can do whatever they want with it.
It can be shelved forever, actually. And I'm afraid that's what's going on. That's what's going to be. Because if you watch this history, if you go into this complicated past of the relationship between the Israelis and Palestinians, you can understand differently, yes, what's going on today. I think it's the same war. It's the same war that started then in 1948. We still live it.
Even drilling down a little bit further, what do you think the main takeaways of the film are? What do you want your audience to understand? Especially given that a lot of the people may not see it, may not be have the benefit of seeing it.
Well, first of all, I want people to understand that the political situation is always complicated, and the relationship between Palestinians and Israel were always complicated. There were never good or pure good and pure evil in this conflict.
Notwithstanding the tendency of both sides to see it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We made war crimes in 1948. Then we didn't want people to know about it. Many efforts were done to conceal it. We make war crimes today. Nobody tried to hide it already.
Yeah, the historian Adam Raz, who appears in the film, notes that the kind of paradigm for war crimes committed by Israel is established there in 48.
Yeah,
and there's
exactly.
a repetition.
Exactly. I mean, I think we live at a time, with all the social media, and you have to pick a side. And I think it's all black and white. You are with the Palestinians or you are with the Israelis, and you have to pick where you are. And they are good and they are bad. And history is never like that. Also present is never like that. It's complicated. And if you really want to understand something about this conflict, you have to dig into this complicated history. And maybe you will be able to understand the complicated present. And maybe if you will start to understand this history and present, you will be able to think about a better future that is based on this knowledge.
All right. Neta Shoshani, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
And also many thanks to you, David.
Great to be here.
And to Itai Shelem, the manager of TLV1 Studios. And now we've got a request because most of you listen to us on the Apple Podcasts app, and we would like to ask you to please consider writing us a review. Good, bad, ugly, up to you. You too can support us by going to our website and subscribing onto a Patreon campaign. Check out our archive. It has probably more than 1,000 interviews by now. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and also on Blue Sky now. Join us again next week for another edition of the Tel Aviv Review. And until then, from us here in Tel Aviv, goodbye.